fighting slave owners. And in 1859, he organized the raid on Harper's Ferry, not too far from here, at the beginning of West Virginia. And the idea was that they were going to attack an armory, take all the guns, travel through the South, arming slaves, and starting an armed uprising against slavery. But interestingly, the event that inspired John Brown more than any other event was an event, I think it was in 1851, and it started because 4 men escaped from slavery here in Baltimore County. One from Towson. You know, all of Towson used to be a slave plantation called the Hampton Estates, owned by a family called the Ridgely family. I went to Ridgely Middle School, and I was never told who the Ridgeleys were and what they did. Baltimore itself is named after a member of the Calvert family. The Calverts were the largest slave-owning family in the history of Maryland. Charles Street is also named after Charles Calvert, the patriarch of the family. And other names that we see on streets and stuff around Baltimore: Gorsuch, Bosley, you know, Bosley Avenue that runs through Towson. The Bosleys were a slave-owning family, big slave-owning family. At the beginning of the Civil War, the kids, the children of the Bosleys and the Ridgeleys and the Calverts got together on horses, and they went through Baltimore County, and they burned every bridge in the county to try to prevent Union soldiers from being able to travel through Maryland to get to the South. That's who these people were, and that's who a lot of these things are named after. 3 men escaped from the Gorsuch plantation up in the north of Baltimore County, and another from the Ridgely's Hampton plantation in Towson. And they made it up to a town in Pennsylvania called Christiana. And in Christiana, hundreds of black former slaves had taken up arms, had taken weapons after the passage of what was called the Fugitive Slave Act, which made it legal for slave owners from the South to go into the North and kidnap people who had escaped and take them back into slavery. It made it legal. And so one day, the patriarch of the Gorsuch family and some of the children of his and some of the children of the Ridgeleys came up to Christiana, where these folks who had escaped from their plantations were living free. And when they came up to the house to try to re-enslave them, they surrounded the people of the town. The black folks of the town came out with weapons and surrounded them and said, "No, go back to Maryland. We live here now." And when they refused, they killed them. They killed the father of the Gorsuch family. They tried to kill the brother. And he ran off, the others ran off. So there was a shootout, basically a one-sided shootout of a beautiful scene of former slaves shooting their former master and killing him in the yard of their house. And this event didn't just inspire John Brown. He quoted it as being the main source of his decision to take up arms. It also inspired a high school classmate in Baltimore County at a private school of the younger son of Edwin Gorsuch, who was killed. And his classmate was John Wilkes Booth, who was inspired by that event to go and assassinate Abraham Lincoln 10 years later. So here we are in Baltimore County, and often forgotten histories in places like this, but that's something that happened here. And so that song was trying to capture some of those moments. Sing a song on a different note. A song about farm workers down in Florida fighting for better wages in the fields where a lot of the tomatoes that we consume, especially at schools, are produced. And how they're leading the struggle for better wages for farm workers across the U.S. So in the immigration debate, when people say that immigrant workers coming in and they're stealing your jobs and blah, 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 this is about a group of farm workers who are doing the opposite. They're actually fighting for better working conditions for all people living in this country. And they know that they're being exploited and they don't like that. So they're trying to stop it. So when people like the people in office right now tell you their version of the story, it's very important to look at the other version of the story, which is like, yeah, immigrant workers are being paid less. And they don't like that. And they're trying to change it. And we should be trying to change it too. Because everyone should be making a fair wage. And everyone should be having an opportunity to access resources. The only reason that it becomes a rat race between different groups of poor people is because the people with their hands on all the money are controlling it. It's better to have you fighting amongst different people. It's better to have white people hating Latinos. It's better to have black people hating Latinos and be fighting against each other for the scraps than it is for those people to be united. Because if they're united and they're making the money that they deserve at work, that means that some guy who does nothing, who sits in an office, won't be making as many millions of dollars a year as he does. He'd be making less millions of dollars. And he doesn't want to, because he's greedy, and he's a sociopath. And he doesn't care about you, and he doesn't care about me. It's a simple story, it's not complicated. You don't have to be an economist to see that. Well, your hands grew tired, naked, skin scuffed and torn up and scarred. The bones inside you are creaking like the gears in an old beat-up car. And though you spent years in the dust, and though you spent years on the line, though you learned well how to work hard, you only grew poorer with time. And your travels were deadly and daring, the snakes in the hot desert sun, the cartels and smugglers, the rapists and cops, where they trailed you with handcuffs and guns. But your body crossed fences and rivers and rode on the rooftops of trains, so far from the people and places you love, to work like a dog on the plains. But your hands are strong, strong like the roots of a tree, and your strong hands set you free. The harvest grew longer and harder, and the hours they followed the sun. But the profits they rose as your wages were frozen, but your time was soon still to come. For the conversation got started, and it spread through the fields like a flame, until the day came when you withheld your labor and took to the streets in your name. And your hands are strong, strong like the roots of a tree, and your strong hands set you free. Well, the bell up on Wall Street rings daily, and it echoes throughout the whole world. The new word of God says, do not spare the rod. His worship is profit and war. But your name is now known in his temple, and feared by the banksters and thieves. For you rose from the fields with courage and hope, and with your reason to dream. Your hands are strong, strong like the roots of a tree. Your strong hands set you free. And your hands are strong, strong like the roots of a tree.